All right, we're back. We are COMP397. That's web game programming at Centennial. And we're week 7, part 1 of our broadcasts. We're going to do more animation. Today we're going to do adding an animated coin to our scene. How do we do that? And we're also going to add in the second video that I'm going to do, or maybe something else, I'm going to add an explosion to the scene. So that's kind of the things that we're using animations. We've kind of talked really briefly about animation last time. We set up animations, but today we're actually going to do some animations. Now, what I've done is, for those people who are here in class or even remote, I've added a new assets to our Slack. So if you go to the Slack channel, and if you scroll up a little bit, there is this new asset.zip file. Please download this new assets. I'm going to add new assets today. Also, one thing I've also done for this one, I'm just going to kind of close this off too. Close. Is I'm using COMP397. I'm using D, the last one we made. I made E for the previous class, and today I'm going to make F for you guys. So you're going to be COMP397 W2018 Mail Pilot Demo F. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to talk about some administrative issues. All right, so I'm just going to duplicate. And I'm going to call this F. This is the one we're going to work with in this class and for people online. All right, so administrative issues. So some people, while I'm doing this, had a bit of an issue when we talked about when the due date was for the alpha. Some people ran a little bit late, so I've extended you guys until Monday to give you guys a little bit more time. I've looked at their games, and during break, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come around and look at your games to see where you're at. I want to see how your alpha is doing. Remember, alpha requires the start screen and 2 levels and the end screen. That's what you need for alpha. Thank you. So lesson 7, and what am I doing? It's actually Mail Pilot. I'll be okay. Mail Pilot demo dash. If I do B, it'll be there, right? And it's going to be, of course, F. So yeah, so there's 2 levels: the start screen and the end screen. That's what's required for alpha, and you need most of your assets and sounds to be functional, right? Now, if you're going to go there, then some people are having issues getting it all going and working. So I've extended you guys until Monday to facilitate that. On another administrative note, I'm just going to do some work here to get ready. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going to go into this for a second while I'm talking. On another administrative note, next week is your exam, all right? So we can call this a test too, right? Just removing Git here so I can start it off again. This is a new repository. So what's happening next week is you're having your exam. It's going to be, you need to know Create.js, you need to know TypeScript, you need to know how to set up your Visual Studio Code, project. You need to know how to be able to transpile from TypeScript to JavaScript. You need to know these things. These are all regular things that I've been talking about for the last 7 weeks. You'll be given a template with assets, so you don't have to find assets. You won't have to install Create.js. It'll be all done there for you, just like we have here for these things. I'll give you some other package that has most things that you need for your example next week, right? So you won't have to do those things, but you'll have to align or change, put together your scenes. So your start screen, your end screen, and your play scene. You'll have one scene to do for next week. It'll be an individual assignment, so only you. That means you can't work with somebody else on this one. You have to code it yourself, which means you need to know Create.js. And the other thing is you have access to everything. You have access to my code, your code, the internet, all that stuff. The only thing you cannot do is talk to each other or message anybody. So your phone has to be away. You can't use Slack or any other messaging app. If you do, then you're just going to get 0 for next week. It'll start promptly at the time that you're coming in. So please come on time. Please come for your section. So don't come for someone else. We're full in the morning, right? And I'd like you to come, and if you can, for the time that you're slotted at. So if you're section 2, come for section 2. Don't come for section 1, all right? Again, I'll start promptly. I will not accept anyone coming late past 30 minutes. So if you're 30 minutes late, you're going to get 0. All right, so you need to be on time next week, right? Because I got to explain everything. I don't want to explain things twice, right? Number one. And the second thing is you'll disrupt other people that are already here that were on time, right? So those are the 2 reasons why. Okay, so please, next week is the one time that I'm going to ask you to, like, please be on time. You need to attend. If you're not here, you cannot do your exam remote. I will not allow that. So if you're not physically in class, I will take attendance next week. You won't be able to do your exam. I won't accept it. You'll just get 0. All right, so you need to be here physically to do that. What is it going to entail? It's really going to be what I've been talking about these last 7 weeks. So, I've been working with MailPilot. I've been talking about how to set up a project. I've been talking about how to set up classes and objects. All those kinds of things you should know how to do. Now, I don't expect you to set up everything. I may have some basic objects there for you. For example, I may have a button and a label class. It doesn't make sense for you to set it up from scratch, okay? So those are 2 things I don't expect. I may have a game object ready to go for you because I don't think it makes sense for you to set up a game object from scratch. You have no time. I may have a sprite sheet for you ready to go with all the sprites already put into your code because I don't expect you to have texture packer. I don't expect that, okay? And I don't expect you to get any additional assets. So all those assets and that kind of stuff, the setup for your project, everything should be given to you, right? The only thing you have to do is add functionality. That's what I really want. So you're not going to get marks necessarily for user interface. You're going to get marks for functionality. How do I make my game work? You'll make a small game. It'll be something that you can do within a 3-hour period. You'll have the full 3 hours to do your work, right? And then at the end, you'll submit your game. If everything works, you're good to go. Any questions for the exam? You guys are good? All right, so again, if you have any other questions, please feel free to shoot me a quick message on Slack. That'd be great. But for now, we need to do a couple things. So the first thing I want to do is now that I've created my new project, which is MailPilot Demo F, and I've created my repository. So I'm going to kind of pull this over here for a second. So I've kind of initialized everything, but I haven't pushed it. And I need to do that by going to my repository, grabbing these last 2 lines of code. And now I will go here and paste. And now everything should be up on GitHub. Okay, so Demo F up on GitHub. I also need to, when I'm here, so I'm going to update this one. So this will be the last one that you have. Again, you will have access to everything that I put up on GitHub. So you'll have my code, your code, whatever you need to get you going. Examples of stuff that we've done together. Okay. But things that I will not help you on next week is transpile. I'm not going to tell you how to transpile your code. I'm not going to help you how to put things on GitHub. You should know how to do those things on your own. I'm not going to help you build your own class, okay, for an object. You should know how to do that too with TypeScript, right? I'm not going to allow you to use Visual Studio like 2017. If you go ahead, if you do it, but that's on you, all right? If you use Visual Studio 2017. So if you use something else other than Visual Studio Code, it's on you. I will do it. I will look at it. I'm not going to say no to it, but I'm not going to help you figure out how to use Visual Studio to make your Create.js stuff work with my template. You must use my template next week. Okay, you cannot use your own template. You can't use your game as a base. All that kind of stuff will not be allowed. All right, and you have to name your project a certain way. All right, so now that I've got my project open, I've got to set up my task runner. So Command-Shift-B on the Mac or Control-Shift-B on Windows, like normal. So now I've got my transpilation working. I'm going to go back to my terminal here, and I'm going to use light-server, which is this little file that I've got from NPM to run my application. And so far last week, what we're able to do is we have this simple functionality. Okay, so pretty cool, but not the most exciting. What I want to do this week is add some more animations. And like I said, I've given you this new animation or new asset pack. Here's my new assets that I've kind of added in. It includes a few different things: explosions, some new enemies, and the coin. Okay, so these are the coin sound, the actual coin that moves around. To give you a preview of the original spreadsheet, I got this back in 2015 from the web. All right, so if you look at the original spreadsheet, it looks like this. So the coin basically will spin around. I want to put this coin on the island. So instead of you colliding with the island, you'll collide with the coin. That's what I wanted to do. Okay, so that's what the functionality is going to do. Okay, but I have questions for you guys to prepare you for your tests, right? What do you think you need to start doing first? What would you do first, Francis? Just ask you because you're right in front of me. So what would you do first? Tell me the first thing. I want to set up my coin. I want to add a coin to my scene, right? And Harry, you're next. You're not going to escape me. I'm going to come and ask you two next, right? So, and then it's Jason, right? Jason, you can't hide, right? So, and then afterwards it's going to be George because George doesn't come to class so often. So I gotta bug him too, right? So he's like, no, yeah. But tell me, guys, and if Yanko was here, Yanko, I mean, I know you're sick today, but if you were here, I would ask you too, all right? So what would you do first? What's the first thing that you're going to do? If I want to add a new asset to the game, new object, what am I going to do? Francis, this is on you now. Okay, but I remember my manifest, so the answer was add the file to my asset manifest. Well, so one thing I need to do is, right now my asset doesn't include any coin, right? Remember last week what we did was we moved things, if I go to F, I optimized, and now I use a sprite sheet. That was last week. So if I look at my images, you can see I don't have any of the coins. So the first thing that you're saying is use the asset. So now, typically, guys, what you would do is you would create this asset, or you would get it from somewhere, buy it, or whatever. I'm not buying it. I've already got it for you. I've given it to you. I'm just going to add it into my projects. That's the first thing. But remember what we're doing. If you look at the code, my code base doesn't use individual assets anymore, right? It uses a sprite sheet. A sprite sheet. So if you go to game.ts, you can see that I use a sprite sheet that has certain locations. This is the frames of each of the sprites. And right now I have cloud, island, plane, and restart button, start button. But I want to add this new stuff. I've been using something called Texture Packer. We mentioned that last week, which is this. So I have inside my Texture Packer in the sprites folder, I have this Texture Packer project, Mail Pilot Demo project. And if I bring it up, you can see that I have these sprites. I want to turn, one thing I've figured out from this morning is I want to turn my trim mode to none. That's for sure, because that's wrong. So this is going to change, this spreadsheet, okay? Also this morning, I was asked, how about alternatives? Do you have any alternatives to Texture Packer that's free? I put some alternatives up on Slack. One of them that we found was this thing called Spreadsheet Packer, which this gentleman here wrote. And another one, which is online, is something called Sheets. If I go up there, it looks like this. It's an online tool where you can add your textures, and you can actually add them and publish them from here. But there's some manual work to do because it doesn't give you the format that Create.js needs. The only one that really does it is Texture Packer. So this one here. Yes, it's not free. It's $55 or thereabouts Canadian. But I think it's a worthwhile purchase if you're a game student, or if you're ever going to do any kind of 2D anything, animations in your webs or on your website or whatever. You need some kind of tool to do that, and Texture Packer is your tool. Okay, cool. So this is the one thing. I need to add it in here, but take a look. This adds things alphabetically. So if I go cloud, island, plane, and I want to add in a coin, it's going to go between cloud and island. Uh-oh, my structure is going to change. So if I go back to this, and if I go back out to my images, I have this coin, these coin images. Here's my coin images, right? Let's just minimize this. I want to drag and drop these coin images into Texture Packer. You can see how they got added in. Here's how they got added in. And then if I publish the sheet, right, then my Texture Packer updates my JSON file, which is inside of my images, sorry, my sprites. Here's my new JSON file. If you notice, it's like a lot bigger. But I need to do this because if I don't change my texture file here, this atlas, which is more like a map, like a sprite map to find out where my sprites are, my sprites will be all messed up. So I'm going to kind of grab this frames first. Let's grab the frames and copy them and move them over into my game.ts. So this is my frames. So my frames have increased. Okay, so these are all my frames. Yay, excellent. But now I need to change my other stuff. Like my animations are different, right? So cloud is cool. It's only one frame. Coin, though, this is new, right? It's going to be frames 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Oh, 8, 9, and 10. There we go. Okay, so that means this for my coin is all this gone. Oop. There we go. Here's my coin. So, and I also want to think about how many animations for my coin to make it look good. So I'm going to have a speed, just like I did for my plane. So last week I talked about if you put speed in there as a property, you can set up some kind of speed. By default, it's 1. Okay? My island doesn't need a special speed, but my plane does. Remember we did this already? So now it's 12. My plane is 12, 13, and 14. Okay, this is just the frames that it's using from last week's lesson, right? But again, my plane needs some kind of speed because I don't want my propeller to go crazy. So it's going to be something like a speed, and I think I set it to 0.5 last week. So we're going to put 0.5 here. How do I test how many frames I need? Well, good thing is Texture Packer has a little test you can do. So if I kind of go from coin 1 to coin 10, I've highlighted these coins. I can do something called anim preview, and you can see that that's what the coin is going to look like. It's kind of cool. I think that's a little bit too slow. And if I went to 60, it's going to look like this. It's going to be way too fast. That's the normal rate, right? If I go to 30, let's go to 30. I think it's still too fast. So something like 20 would be good, I think. That's about right. Okay, would you agree? 20 for the frame, the little coin to kind of flicker in and out, right? So again, how would you do this another way? You could trial and error it. You can bring the thing on, see how it's looking. It looks really bad. Change the frame rate. So 20 out of 60, what is that? That's 1/3, right? That means that my speed should be 0.33. So going back to this, instead of my speed being 1, we should reduce that to 0.33, which is roughly 1/3 of my game frame rate. My game's frame rate is 60, 1/3 is 20. Okay? Okay, so 0.33 and 0.5. Maybe this is really fast too, but who cares for now? All right, so I've got my game. It works so far. I've got my assets in. Let's check to see if it doesn't mess me up. So I'm going to go back to this. Oh, man. What the heck happened here? Right? See? So one thing we didn't do is we didn't port this. This is actually in here. I want to port all this into my game.ts. So I copied the frames, but I didn't copy the animations. So I'm going to kind of copy this all the way down in here. When I save this now, you should see everything as normal. So we have to do a test. All I'm doing here is I'm testing that my assets are okay. So the assets look okay. Now that I've incorporated them, I can go to here. These are all the assets I added in. I'm going to stage them all. And I'm going to say added coin asset. That's what I did, all right? Because that adds it into the game. But the coin itself needs something else. So Francis, you're correct. I added the coin asset. Okay, Harry, what's the next step? So I've added in the coin asset, but now I want to add this thing so it appears on my screen. What's the next step that I should do? Jason, you're next. And then it's going to be some of the other guys, Alexander, and George, and, Alexi. You guys are going to have to answer the question, right? So it's coming. You're not going to escape either, my friend. Harry, what's the answer? What do I do next? I got my coin asset. So physically get all the assets in my spreadsheet. What's the next step? You're going to have this on your test next week. Okay, too long. I'm going to move on to Jason. Jason. You didn't watch last week's video. Whoa, okay, I'm going to bounce back to Alex. Alex, what's the next step? Alexander, huh? But I don't have it. I don't have, what am I going to add to the scene? The coin by itself? George, you're answering? George, what should I do? Create a class. Yeah, I need a class. I need some way to put this thing. George, you're correct. Bing, 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 bing. George won the prize for this one. It bounced from Harry. It's going to come back to you again until you answer one. Okay? And then it's going to come back to you, Jason. Huh? Huh? Did you? I didn't hear it. Okay, I'm sorry. So yeah, so create a class is the answer. So we need to create a class inside of our objects. I'm sorry for people online. I know it's kind of annoying because you might have known the answer. Or you might be watching the video, but this is what we need to do. We need to make a coin class. So we're going to add a new file to the objects folder called coin.ts. And in this case, it's going to be a little bit different than everything else we've made. So we're going to say module objects. That's where it's going to go. And we're going to say export class coin with a capital C, which extends objects.gameObject. All right, so that's the thing that it's going to do. Inside here, like always, we're going to have private instance variables, so some kind of data members, public properties, if any. We're going to have a constructor or two, public methods, or sorry, private methods. Let's do private methods first, and then public methods. So I'm kind of framing my class. That's the first thing I'm going to do, right? So I know that I can look at my GameObject superclass to add some members, and one of the things I'm going to look at is I definitely need my start and update function. So these two functions, start and update, I'm going to definitely add in. So start and update, I'm going to go back to my coin. And in my public methods, those two for sure I need, start and update, 100%. I also need a constructor, and the constructor is going to look something like this. So constructor, and by the way, one thing you cannot do next week is look at videos. So videos will not be allowed. You can't look at my videos online, so please study ahead of time. Yeah. And it's going to be coin, right? Because we're going to basically say, I want the constructor to create a new coin. How do I know it's this? Because if you look at some of the other objects, cloud does the exact same thing. And the other thing it does is it starts off our start method, right? So that's definitely the same. So this start method is going to be called because start is where we initialize stuff, right? So those two things we're going to do. How do I know this? Because in my GameObject superclass that we did last week, notice that I passed in the string of the name, and then I use my texture atlas and the image string to form out my sprite. That's what I'm doing, okay? So that's why it's so easy now. It looks really easy, but actually what's happened is we've simplified a lot from last week. All right, so that's all you need the constructor. I start my object, I update my object, and so how is this coin going to work? It's going to physically appear on top of my island, right? And as the island moves down, the coin is going to move down with it. So a couple of options I have. I could add the coin to the island, assuming that the island is a display object. But if you go down and check, island, regular sprites, you can't do an add child on a sprite. You can't say like this.add child on my island. You can only do add child on a container, like the container object, which is the scene, or the stage. Those are the two things, or your own custom container, whatever your container is. So I can't just add child to a sprite, won't work. So that means that I've got to add it somewhere else. So let's suppose that this is all I need right now, okay? This is my first version of my coin. It's pretty simple, actually. Next, what's next? So I added my class. So George, you were correct. I'm going to go back to Harry. Harry, I've added my class. What's the next step? I'm not done yet. I haven't finished adding my coin into my game. What's the next thing I need to do? There's something missing. No, wait for Harry, and then I'll come back to you. Huh? So I added my my coin object, and now? So I've added so here's what I've done. I've added my asset, my coin asset. I've added my coin object, which is my class, right? And well, actually my coin class. I haven't added my object yet. And then what else? I need to do something else to make this available in my game. TypeScript? Add what? Script? Nope. Jason, what do I do next? Sorry? Go to start, okay. Why would I go to start? Start method, okay, here, I'm going to start, yeah, okay, fine, but that's already there. What else? I got to do what? The position of my coin. Okay, but now you're assuming that the coin is part of the game. The coin is still not part of the game. What am I missing? I'm going to go back. Oh. Is that? Play.ts. Still not going to work. Still not going to work, right? What am I missing to make my game, my new class, available to my game? Reference, I need to do that for sure. What's the other thing? There's one thing that's more important than referencing. Index.html. If you don't add it to your index.html, your class will never work. Guys, this is critical for next week. All right? Next week, you must know the order that I'm doing it, because if you don't add it to your index.html, because we're not using any kind of loader or bundler, right? You must add it here, right? Or else it'll never work. Okay, question. Where do I add it? That's the next one. Can I just add this thing anywhere I want? Why is that? Well, it needs to know about my island, right? It needs to know about my island. And my coin, you know, my coin needs to know how to collide. So it needs to know about collision, right? Island might need to know about coin. So maybe what I should do is put my island, my coin before my island, right? Maybe. Okay. Well, if in my island class I need to know about the coin, I need to put my coin first. If my coin needs to know about my island, I need to put my island first in my island class, in my coin class. But I'm not going to do that. So somewhere in here is okay. I'm not going to do it in the class itself, is what I'm saying. So in here, I'm going to put in my new coin object, coin.js. I'm going to do what Jason said, which was inside of our core. I'm also going to keep track of this inside of our references. So notice that I have my references in some kind of order. I'm going to go into my, again, between my plane and my island and put the coin in. So these things make my coin now physically available in my game. It's available. It's part of the cache. Now I can go do what people said, which is go to my play scene. Okay, that's the next step. So I'm going to go to my play scene, which is the next step. And okay, is it my play scene I need to go into? You could try and put it in as part of the island, but then you have to instantiate a new coin as part of the island object. And you can't add child, right, to the island object. You'd have to add child to the scene object, right? So yeah, there's different ways of doing this. So in my play scene, I want to make a new coin object. So we'll just add it at the bottom. It doesn't matter where. In this case, here we're just declaring it. So here's my scene. I'm going to make a new coin object, which is of type objects.coin. There it is. And then what I want to do in my scene, right, just like we normally did for everything else, I'm just going to make this a little bigger for you guys to see. In my scene, in my start object, or my start scene, I'm going to go to ocean, plane, island. Before my island, I'm add my coin. This dot underscore coin is equal to a new objects.coin. There we go. So that's second. I'm going to put that in there. And then I definitely want to update my coin if there's any kind of update. Just in case there is, before my island, I'm going to update my coin. So this dot underscore coin dot update. Okay, cool. I've updated my coin. And you know what? I also want to add my coin to my scene. So if I go down here where it says main, island, where should I put my coin? I want to make it go above the island. This will be a question for next week. After island, because it's layer order, right? So it's ocean is underneath the island. Island is underneath the coin. Plane is on top of the coin. So island should definitely go before coin. So we're going to say add the coin to the scene, right? This dot add child, this dot underscore coin. So the coin gets added, but right now it's added at the top left corner of the scene. I don't want that. I want it to be following the island. If I want to follow the island every single time, there's two ways to do this. I don't have access to the island inside my coin object. I don't know where it is, right? But I can go to my update function, which is up here. And before I update my coin, with whatever that's going to do, nothing right now, I want to do something like this dot underscore coin dot x is equal to this dot underscore island dot x. It's ugly. but it works. This dot underscore coin dot y is equal to this dot underscore island dot y. We're going to optimize this another day. Remember I told you, iterate, then optimize. Iterate, then optimize. It's better to do it that way than keep everything optimized. It takes longer to keep everything optimized, and you don't get your results. So what this does is it basically says, hey, wherever the island is, so too is my coin. Let's see if this actually works at this point now. I think we have enough where the coin has been added to my scene, and we should be able to see the coin. So I'm going to save it. I'm going to go back to here and refresh just to make sure it needs refreshing, and then I should see my coin. And there it is, right?
Yay. Yay.
Right?
Yay.
But I don't want my plane to collide with the island anymore. It's not the island that I care about. It's the coin. I want to pick up that coin. And the coin is like really an idea of me getting money for delivering the mail. So as my plane is flying over, I fly over the island, I deliver my mail, I get some money. Maybe it gets transmitted to me electronically in this new age, right? But somehow I got to be able to pick up coins, money, for what I'm doing, okay? And it's going to be like 100 coins every time, or 100 points, whatever it's going to be. So I need to change my code a little bit, but before that, I know I've added my new coin asset and it works. So I'm going to say something like added coin object, right? Because that's what I've done. I've successfully done that now. Let me stage it first, and then push it. All right, cool. So that is what I've done. Now notice what I'm doing here. I'm iterating, and as I go, I'm adding a commit. Next week, guys, you'll be judged on, are you using GitHub as a backup only, or are you using it to develop your application? I want to see multiple commits next week, not just, and something that makes sense. Don't put ASDF, okay, or gobbledygook, or another commit, or something weird and doesn't make any sense. Make sure that it makes sense, what you're doing, all right? So again, so I've got this, you know, I've added it in, but it's not working exactly like I want. What I want to do is when I collide, I don't want to collide with my island anymore. I want to collide with my coin. And I can do that in the collision manager. So inside of my collision manager, notice I check for what I'm colliding with, island and cloud. But I don't care about island anymore. I only care about his coin. Now it's not going to work. Not yet. Let's make some space here. This is good. It'll look for coin, but the problem with it is it's not going to work. And the reason for it is because inside of my placing, if I go to my placing now, you can see that what's happening on updates is I'm checking to see that my collision is with my plane and my island. And I want to send in coin now. So this dot coin. Let's see if this works, this little change. So instead of checking with my plane and island, I want a plane and coin. I don't want to collide with my island anymore, right? Okay, let's see if this works. So just this little change. So I'm going to go here and start.
Yay.
Cool, right?
Yay.
Which is good. I know I'm colliding with my island now because
Yay.
it wouldn't work otherwise.
Yay.
Yes. I haven't put a collider on the coin. All I'm doing is checking to see what the distance between my plane and my coin is. When it's less than that, that's what my collision manager does right now. There's no collider, so to speak. It's literally just distance check right now. This is the way we do our collisions. I really don't like my yay sound though, okay? I think my yay sound is pretty darn ugly. Yay. I want to make a coin sound, like a classic retro coin sound, right? I can do that. I've given you a couple of tools up here on Slack. One of them is called bfxr.net. Right, so bfxr.net looks like this. It's Flash, Flash-enabled tool. So you have to enable Flash or allow Flash with Chrome. When it loads, there's one more tool I got to show you too. When it loads, it actually allows you to make some retro noises and save them as WAV files. Okay, so let's take a look at this when it finishes loading. Eventually, wow, this is really slow today. There it is. Oh. I was so impatient, I didn't let it load. So what this thing does when it loads, maybe it's going to load for you a little faster because you're not broadcasting like me, right? What it's going to do is it's going to allow you to make some waveform noises, right? And it'll give you the look and feel of, or the feel of, this retro, old school kind of game sound. One more site, I'll let this load. One more site that I recommend also is Chip Tones. So there's another one. So here's Chip Tones. And Chip Tone is a more advanced version of BFXR when it finishes loading. So this is BFXR. So I want some kind of coin pickup. Let's see if I can do it. So I click pick up coin, right? Kind of okay. That's not bad. That one I like, right? Chip Tones does the same thing. If I wanted to kind of do a coin, right? That's pretty cool too. So this is more of a more advanced version of something that we've already seen. And what you can do is you can modify some of the stuff that's already here. Like I can take that noise and add vibrato or harmony or synth or tremolo or ringing or wah-wah or bitrate or all of them, right? So I can add these ones on. You know, to kind of create whatever sound you want. Really kind of cool little tool. So both these two are cool. I'm going to use BFXR for this one, and because I want to play that sound, right? That's the one I want. And I want to export the wave. And what this is going to do is going to ask me where to put it. I'm going to call this coin.wave. And I'm going to put this in my F folder inside Assets Audio. We call coin.wave. Now notice I took OGG files, so that's OGG file, which is the open source OGG Vorbis, as well as wave files so far. So now that I've saved it, if I go back to my project, not Microsoft Visual Studio, not that. If I go back to my project, you can see that under my assets, I have a new green area, which means something new. I've added my coin sound, that's right here, but I haven't added it into my game. Okay, back to you guys. Alexander, how do I add my coin sound into my game? I made my coin sound online with BFXR, but I want to add it into my game. What do I do? Again, this is like next week's stuff. Okay, I'm going to skip over to Alexi. Alexi, I got my game. I made a coin sound. I want to add it to my game. What do I do now? I got my coin sound. How do I add my coin sound to my game so I can use my coin sound? I have a game object for my coin. I want to just make my coin sound. How do I add it so it's available to my game? It's not available right now to my game. I just added it as an asset, but it's not really part of my game yet. What do I need to do? I'm going to play it with SoundJS, but it's not available to me through SoundJS. I need to make it available in my game. It's not available right now. Sorry? My library is part of my game already. But my coin sound, even though I've added it into my project, it's not in my game right now. What's the next step that I have to do to put it in my game, to load it in my game? Okay, so no. So George? Yes, you need to add it to the asset. Very good, Francis. So inside my core, inside my game, it's pretty simple, guys. I have to preload it, right? So right now I have it here. I have my yay sound, and I have to change my yay sound. I'm not going to use it anymore. I'm going to call this the coin sound, and the coin sound is going to be the coin.wave. Coin.wave. I'm not going to use my yay sound anymore, right? And inside of my collision manager, right? Inside of my collision manager, which is inside managers collision.ts, I'm going to change my play from yay to coin. Now, every time I hit the coin, it should make the right sound. Let's just kill Visual Studio for whatever reason it opened up by accident. All right, so let's check it out and see if that works. So here I am. Let's refresh. And I can start, right? A little bit better. By the way, today's earlier sound was maybe better than this one. But you can see that it sounds more of a coin than before, right? Okay, so cool. So the sound is different. We've loaded it in, and we use BFXR to do that. Okay, cool. But my coin still hangs out. And in most games, when you run over the coin, it disappears, right? It goes away. But I don't want to make the coin go away. I just want it to be unavailable to collide with anymore until the island gets reset. So there's a couple ways to do this. So one thing is, once I play my coin sound, right, I have access to the thing I'm colliding with, which is this object 2. So I could change my object 2's alpha channel, object2.alpha. I could change it to 0. So I could say that, well, alpha, which is the alpha transparency, I can make it fully transparent and you can't see it anymore. But I can still collide with it, which is not cool, right? I can still collide with it. And I don't want to collide with it. I want to not be able to collide with it. Well, so let's see what the effect is by making alpha 0. So if I start, and if I collide with my coin, it's gone, right? But it's always gone, forever. But actually, I can still collide with it, right? See? Even though it's invisible. And that's not what I want. It's good, it disappears, but I want it to come back. And I also want to check to see, well, if it's invisible, or if it's not available, I shouldn't be able to collide with it. So here in my coin, I want to do a check. I want to say something like, if object2.alpha, right, if object2.alpha, right, is not equal to 0, so if it's not 0, then you can collide with it. Okay, I can collide with this thing. If it's not equal to 0. If it's equal to 0, that means that it's invisible. And if it's invisible, then I shouldn't be able to see it. I shouldn't be able to collide with it. So that's the first thing. So I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. So format my document. All right, cool. So then let's see if this works now. So, okay, cool. I collide with it and I go back. I can't collide with it anymore, right? I'm going to turn this down just a touch because it's all the way maxed. All right, so what I mean is, now if I go through it and if I go over it, I can collide with it. But when I come back around, right, and I try to collide with it again, even though it's invisible, I can't collide with it anymore. See, it doesn't allow me to collide because I've already, it's invisible. Okay, but now I want to bring it back into visibility, right? I want, after it resets, if it goes off screen and comes back in, I want to bring it back. And this is where I need to change my coin object. All right, so in my objects coin, here's my coin.ts. I have these start and update functions, right, that I haven't used. And I have another thing called check bounce, right? Remember inside of my game object, I have a check bounce function that I could always use just to keep in check with what I'm doing. So this one, no pun intended. So here's this one. And my check bounce function, I could say something like this. If this.y is greater than 480 plus this.height, so when the object leaves the screen, right? As soon as that happens, that's really when I reset, right? And I want to make this.alpha equals to 1, right? And what this is going to do is going to check to see if I'm off screen, and then it's going to turn the coin back on, right? You won't be able to see it until it comes around, right? Because it's going to follow where my island is going to be. Wherever my island is going to be, that's so too is the coin, right? And I'm going to do this on update. So in my update function of my coin, I'm going to say this.checkbounce. So basically, my coin will turn the coin back on, right? If I'm resetting. Notice that I'm not calling the reset function because the coin is going to move with the island all the time. It's not going to have its own motion. It's always going to follow my island. All right, so let's see if this works now. So again, I'm running, and I do the coin, and now it's back, right? And it's gone, and now it's back. And I can keep doing this. And this is going to be really much better because I can't trick the computer anymore into getting multiple collisions anymore. I can't do that anymore where, you know, you can swipe back and forth. This will take care of that bug for me. I pick up my coin and I'm back. Okay, I'm doing pretty good. Wait a minute. Maybe I can get to 1,000 points, right? Hold on. Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be really nice when I got to 1,000 points that I got an extra life? Like a pickup? Oh man, I'm at 1,400 points. 1,500. Wow, I'm doing the best I've ever. Oh, wait. Well, oh, no, don't go for that one. Okay, hold on a second. Oh, no. Oh, okay, nothing I could do there. Wouldn't it be nice if I had that extra life? If I went to 1,000 points? How do I set that up? Well, I need two things. I need to have some kind of sound, maybe a visual effect that shows me that I've picked up something, right? Like I've gone to 1,000 points. I need some kind of visual effect that says, hey, life, extra life, or something like that, right? Or something that flashes on my screen that shows my life changing, you know, like a green value on my life that's temporarily there and then gone, something like that. I got to give visual and auditory feedback to the user, right? So how would this work if I was going to do this update? Well, first of all, I've added my coin finally into the mix and it works. So I'm going to say added coin object to the game, or version 2. Push. So this is like my finalized coin. My coin now works, right? I'm no longer colliding with my island. I'm only colliding with my coin. Okay, cool. What if I do what I said? This is a really cool thing. Now, question for you guys. Okay, I'm putting it out there. Did I say that I was going to do some kind of pickup anytime this morning, you know, during the day today? No, I didn't say that. But guess what? It came to me, right? And me as a developer, like you guys, I want to add this really cool effect. Should I? That's a great answer. It depends on how much time it's going to take. If I have a really cool effect I want to add in, or if I'm planning to add a pickup later on and I have a way of doing it right now, which is quick, then I think it's okay, right? That's a good pivot. That's an added feature that you want to add in. However, if it's something that's going to be long and difficult, even if you have a really good idea, forget it. Leave it out until next iteration, because you have a plan and you need to get this done. You have to get your alpha done. Your alpha needs a start screen and an end screen and 2 play levels. And if you don't have that, don't add extra stuff yet, because it's just going to slow down your production. Okay, cool. So, but this case, it's pretty simple to add, at least the auditory piece. The visual piece I'm not going to add in right now because that takes a little bit more work, okay? So I'm going to add kind of a half-assed version of my pickup. So first of all, I need a pickup sound. Let's see if I can generate one. So I'm going to go back to BFXR, and let's see if I can generate a pickup sound. I'm just going to turn this up a little bit so we can hear it. So pickup. All right, that's cool. But what about power up? Not bad. How about what does chip tone sound like? Is there a power up for for chip tone, right? Well, 1 up, lose, hurt, and blip. So there's nothing really here for a power up. I mean, there's jump and boom, and 1 up, right? But there's really not. There's no power up for this thing. There's also lose and stuff. This is where I kind of use both. You know, power up is kind of cool. So what I heard was something that looked like or sounded like this. Okay, let's try again. No. No. Nope. That's not bad, right? So let me hear that sound again. So I got some kind of level. I got a life, right? So that's kind of a very quick and dirty way of doing it. I want to export that wave. And I'm going to save it as life.wave, right? So I got my coin.wave, save it. And I'm going to go back to this, and you can see that just like last time, I have my life wave. Did I add it to the right place? I did. And I got to add it into my core preloading. Right here, I'm just going to copy this whole thing. And I got a sound effect, which is going to be called life. And in my collision manager, that's how I'm going to manage it. So in my collision manager, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say something like this. I'm going to say, well, what if I collected enough points. So if managers.game.scoreboard.score is, what does this do? It says if I can divide my score by 1,000 and get a remainder of 0, that means for every 1,000 points, I'm going to get a free life. And what that means to do that is I'm going to say managers.game.scoreboard.lives, right, plus equal to 1. So this is add a life power up. That's what this is. And when I do this, I'm also going to make a sound. I'm going to say create.js.sounds.play, and then it's going to be the life sound. All right, to test this, instead of 1,000, let's put this down to 200 to see if it works. So remember, 1,000 is hard to get, so I'm not going to waste your time seeing 1,000. Let's try 200. So 100, 200, right? 100, you can get that one. 200, 100, 200. Right? It sounds pretty cool too, right? So I'm pretty good with that. You can see that I've got 6 lives, right? And so as I go up, I mean, it's only 200 in this case, but I should be rewarded for every time I get to that multiplier, whatever it is. Oh, I couldn't make it. There we go. All right, cool. So that works, but I don't want to change it to 200. I want to make it more difficult, so 1,000. I get to 1,000 points and I get a free life. Okay. 1,000. I want to make it so that's really super, because I'm going to give other power ups too. Okay. And I'm also going to give other chances for my player to get more points, like killing other enemies, right? So there'll be other point options too, right? Even 1,000 may not be enough. I may have to bump it up to 1,500. Okay, but I like your thinking. So cool. So I've got my little power up. So I'm going to put in here, and we're not done because I don't have a visual, but I'm going to do something like added life power up version 1. So I really haven't finished it yet. I still need to do more work. Why? Because I don't have any visual, something that says I got a power up. I hear it, but I don't know what it is, right? It should be something that's visible on my UI somewhere. Okay, cool. So that part is done. And the next piece I want to do is I really want to work on explosions. So we talked about something that's like this, a coin. It's pretty simple. Now an explosion, I want to talk about this first, and I want to try and set it in motion, and then we'll take a break, okay? The problem with an explosion is twofold. I got to figure out how to manage it. Let me talk about this a little bit, right? I need to add the explosion graphic. That's the first thing I need to do. And it's going to modify my, my manifest again. So I've got to change my sprite sheet. That's the next thing that's going to happen. And some of you might say, well, Tom, isn't it better to set up all of your sprites and all of your assets at the same time so you don't have to do a lot of this work? And the answer is, yeah, it's cool. It's true. If I had all my assets planned, then it'd be okay. But the problem is, even if you had your assets planned, you might add something else. So I got to show you how to update your sprite sheet. Okay? So I need to do that first. The second thing is, just like we did earlier, I need to add it as a new class, right? Explosion. I need to add the explosion class in. But these are the two things I can do. Now, here's the thing. When does my explosion come into be? How is this explosion effect going to come into play? The explosion effect is going to come into play when I hit the cloud, right? So I'm going to hit the cloud, and there's going to be an explosion effect. Yay, fantastic. So here's my explosion. It's going to appear, and it's going to do its animation. But guess what? By default, my animation is going to keep going, and it's going to stay there. I need to be able to get rid of my explosion effect. I need to create an event to track when my animation is done so that I can get rid of my explosion. And furthermore, if I instantiate a new explosion every time I hit a cloud, I'm going to have a memory leak, right? Because I have these explosions that I'm adding in. Now, chances are I'm only going to add in 5 explosions because I only have 5 lives. But what if I keep getting lives? Maybe I'll have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 explosions. that I'm going to have at one time per scene. That's 10 extra objects into my scene. I need to manage those. So this extra thing, this explosion is a little bit more difficult to do than a coin. All right, let's try this out. So just like I said before, I need to update my sprite sheet and my the stuff I have in my manifest. I gave you guys an explosion, and it's a bunch of frames. It starts from explosion 1, and it goes to explosion 7. All right, now there's different ones. There's explosion. There's big explosion, which looks like this. Let's take a look at what these look like. So here's big explosion. So big explosion actually is, if we can get to it, really big. And this would be great for a final explosion or an explosion of of a boss monster. One day when my fireworks opens, it's just I'm taxing my system because I'm doing so much stuff, right? I'm broadcasting, I'm playing sounds, I have texture packer open, crazy, right? So here's my explosion. And you can see that it's way bigger than my plane. And it's also more realistic. So it kind of doesn't even go with my art style. Might go with your art style. That's why I gave it to you guys, right? But for me, I don't think this makes any sense. I'm not going to use this one. And there's also other explosion. There's also small explosion. I want to show you this one. Small explosion might be good for an enemy, right? Because it's quite small, like this big. So it's actually smaller than my plane. Whereas explosion is the right size. It's the size of my plane, right? Approximately. And you can see that it's going to be around the right size. So this is the one I want to use. But I've given you more than one, just in case you want to use it. So I'm going to copy this one. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to paste. The other thing I've also provided is an explosion MP3. So I've done OGG, or Ogg Vorbis files. We've done WAV files. I'm going to show you that MP3s work too. So I'm going to grab this MP3, and I'm going to bring this into the audio side and just plop it in there as well. Now, realistically, what you want to do is use one type of sound. Don't try and, you shouldn't do this. In real practice, you shouldn't do waves, MP3s, and OGG files. And if you notice, the sound of all these, the shape of all these things vary a lot, right? Like OGG files, my engine sounds 87 kilobytes. Well, they're all in kilobytes. My explosion sounds like the lowest, 15 kilobytes. My thunder sound is 22 kilobytes, and so on. So there's different levels of compression. And your sound card, it works hard to try and figure out what kind of sound you're going to do and decode it, right? So you should try and use one type: log, wave, MP3, something. All right, so that's the first thing. So the first thing, we've got our assets. Now we have to modify my sprite sheet. So again, I'm going to bring up texture packer. I'm going to save the current project, and I want to include new assets. So I'm going to go into my files. We've just added some new images, which are my explosion images. Notice that it's going to go between coin and island, which is going to mess up my frames again. I got to redo all that stuff again. Right? There's some extra work to be done. So I'm going to get all this, and I'm just going to drag and drop it in here, and it's going to place them in here. Now let's check and see what my explosion is going to look like. So I can select all the frames in my explosion. Oops. All the frames in my explosion. And I can use my animation preview to see what it looks like. Well, this is 20 frames, and I think it's too fast. Here's what 60 frames looks like, right? That's not right, right? It's way too fast. For my explosion, it looks like something like 10 frames might be just right. Let me show you this. Here's 10 frames, right? That's probably around right, and I'll show you why. Because you want it to go and then disappear. You want to see your explosion, but you don't want to make it too crazy, right? So something like boom, 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 when you hit the clouds, that's what it's going to look like, right? So that means if it's 10 frames out of 60, then it's going to be 1/6, which is roughly 0.16, if I'm not wrong. And if you want to try and calculate that, with my calculator, let's bring this up. So I want to say 1/6, so 10 out of 60, which is roughly 0.16, times, or 16% of my regular frame rate. So that's my frame rate for this thing. Let's publish. Cool, so now that I've published, I'm going to go back into my code, I got some new assets, right? And I'm going to go to my JSON file, and you can see that I've got all this now, a lot more. And this is the thing, when you add more assets, can you imagine managing all this yourself? It's a lot, right? And that's why we use something like Texture Packer or something like that to keep track of stuff, because it's just that much more efficient. So this changed. These frames changed. But so too did the rest. So if I go back to here, you can see that my coin has also is the same, but let's just put it back. Again, you might think, well, you're typing it again. Yeah, I am. But sometimes it's easier to do this than reset the other thing. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And again, just like last time, again, this is good for repetition for you guys to see it. There's two parts of this object, this coin that you're creating. One is frames, and the other one is going to be speed. And we previously set the speed to 0.33. So that's like 20 frames per second, right? My explosion now is similar. So I'm going to say, well, it is 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So those frames. So I can get rid of all this. But my frame rate is 0.16. So that's what we found out when we tested it in Texture Packer. So we'll say speed is equal to 0.16. So only 10 frames per second, roughly. Okay, and my plane, it's 19, 20, and 21, those 3 frames. And you can see that the plane and all the other animations have a different frame rate. Every single animation we've made so far has its own special frame rate that makes sense for that particular animation, 0.5. Okay, so this is what we need here. Restart button and everything else is the same. So I'm just going to grab all this, copy it, go back down to my game.ts, and I want to paste it. I want to override this stuff. So again, sprite sheets make things easier, but there is some maintenance that you have to do every time you add a new object. You have to reformat your atlas, your sprite atlas, or your sprite sheet, the thing that points to your sprite sheet, to kind of give, hey, we've moved things around, because notice my sprite sheet now has more stuff on it, and it's moved things around, and so I have to point to it. I'm going to save my project, so I'm going to say File, Save Project, right? So I want to be able to always keep track of my latest changes. All right, cool. So now that I have my object, it's here, I can, let's just close all these files up. I'm going to go here and say something like, stage all this. I'm going to say added explosion asset. Right, that's what I did just now. Here and push. This pushes the asset up to GitHub. Notice how many changes I've already made. Explosion, my coin, and now that's the easy part. The easy part is actually what I just did there, because that's just updating my sprite sheet and adding my assets so it's available in my game. Okay, but I can't do anything yet. I have no explosion class. So going back, I need to make an explosion class. Going back to the questions I asked you earlier. So again, I'm going to go back to my objects. I'm going to go into my objects folder. I have a new file. I'm going to call it explosion.ts. And I'm going to do something like module objects. Here's my module objects. I'm going to go with export class explosion with a capital E, which extends the objects.ameObject class. I'm going to have private instance variables. I'm going to have public properties, maybe, probably not, but I put it in here anyway. Perform some kind of constructors, private methods, and maybe some public methods. My constructor is going to look very similar to what I've seen before, which is constructor. And now with my sprite sheet, I'm just going to pass my name of my explosion to my super constructor. I need some methods, and I'm going to grab these. They're available inside of my object, my game object superclass. I'm only going to grab these two though for now. So reset, start, and update these two. Because right now I can only think of needing only those two. Maybe I'll add the other ones later when I need them. And I'll put them inside public methods. I'm going to call my start method for my constructor. This is all the same stuff I've done before. Okay, cool. So now I've got my explosion. Okay, so how do I want this thing to work? First of all, I have to attach it to my files, and I need to put it in my index.html. And now the question. So now we come back to the question. So now I have my explosion, and my explosion is going to be made when I have a collision. My collision happens, and I want to instantiate a new explosion upon my collision with my cloud. Okay? So, does my cloud need to know about explosion? Not really. Has nothing to do with it. It's just a new object, right? How about my collision class? Should it know about explosion? Yes. So that means it has to be before my collision class. And this is kind of outside of what I've done earlier. It's got to be up here because my collision is going to instantiate an explosion, which means it's got to be before my collision class. Again, this may not be so relevant later, but for now, it's required. You kind of copy this, you go here, and put in explosion.js. Okay, I also got to put a reference just for future use, and you guys don't see that yet, but I've been doing it through the entire time. I've got to put it inside my reference.ts. So here's my same thing I'm going to do. This time I'm going to put it up here above my collision class, so below my game object. So I'm just going to grab this game object, and I need to put it in here. And I need to put my game object first because my explosion is a game object. Okay, cool. So why am I doing this again? Well, one thing, I wouldn't have to do this if I use something called Webpack, right? So Webpack is a bundler, and it's great for the web. But my challenge is, by using Webpack, and I know some people have said, hey, why don't you use Webpack, right? I can't. That's the answer. Not easily. Because Webpack needs a loader, and it needs two loaders. I need a TypeScript loader that I need to use with Webpack, and I also need some kind of Create.js or Easel.js loader. And the Easel.js loader does not exist, which means I have to create one. So great idea, but maybe for another time. And what Webpack does, it creates a dependency map, right? So example, I need some JavaScript files, maybe here's some SAS files, PNG images, whatever I need. And then this is for my project, and then it outputs everything that my static assets afterwards. So Webpack bundles everything together, not just your images, but everything else, all your JavaScript, and spits out one file at the end, a development release. Great idea. Not going to work, right? So I'm just putting it out there. If someone thought about this, someone said, hey, why don't you use Webpack? Can't do it right now. But I would like to in the future. Okay. So that's why I'm doing these things, these references and everything else. I'm doing it because I know that in the future I'm going to have to go with one file, and I need to have a reference map to do that. Okay. So I'm good. I've added in my objects, which is explosion, but I really haven't tested it. I need to test this out. So how is it going to work? So in my collision manager, my explosion is going to be created when I collide. But I want my explosion to take care of itself. And what I mean by that is when my animation plays those 8 frames or 7 frames, as soon as it finishes playing the explosion, I want it to disappear. Because if I don't, it's just going to repeat the explosion animation over and over again forever, just like the coin. It's just going to keep looping. There's no way to stop it, okay? So there's a way of doing that. And I'm going to do it inside my coin object, right? So in my objects, inside my coin.ts file, my explosion.ts file, not my coin. In my start method, I'm going to make an event handler, right? My event handler is going to look very similar to my keyboard event handler. And I don't know if you remember that, so I'll bring it up. So if you look at my manager's keyboard manager, which is my keyboard manager, when I add an event listener with my keyboard, I use this syntax where I use bind this. What bind this does is it passes a reference to the this context into that closure, right? And you might say, Tom, I really don't understand what the hell you're talking about. And you're going to be justified in doing so. So here's how it's going to look. I'm going to say something like this. This dot on, and there's a new event handler or event called animation end. So when the animation ends, is what I'm saying, then do something. What am I going to do? Now there's two ways to set this up. I could do something like some kind of anonymous function with an arrow function. You do something here, right? Do something, whatever it's going to be. That's one way of doing it. But my problem here is I will lose the this context. So I couldn't do something like this dot. It wouldn't work. Because I don't know what my this context is. Because I'm inside an anonymous event that goes from here to here, this is considered a closure. So therefore, I will not have access sometimes. I might get an undefined if I try and do something here. This dot alpha, if I want to turn my alpha on and off or something like that, I may not be able to do it. And by the way, if you see the syntax, what does it mean? This is equivalent to this. That's just new syntax for ES6, ECMAScript 6, the new version of JavaScript. And it also is compatible with TypeScript. This is the way it's done. It's an arrow function. So we can do it this way. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to create a private method, right? So I'm going to make a private method called animation ended, right? And this private method, I'm going to say that this dot alpha, when animation ends, this dot alpha is equal to 0. All right, so when my animation ends, my alpha is 0. Okay? So you're going to see that this is not even important in a second. So I'm going to call this dot animation ended. So when my animation ends, I'm going to call this method right here. This is the callback method. But I want to bind this. And I'm going to pass in false for bubbling. So why am I doing this? Because I did the exact same thing in my keyboard.ts, right? Which binds an event handler. However, here's where I have a problem. I can let the keyboard event handler live for my entire program because I want to have my keyboard controls work every level. But what about my poor explosions? I set up an event. And what is an event? Anyone know? How about someone advanced like Alexi? Alexi, I set up an event listener in JavaScript. What's really happening in the background? Interview question. Okay, what are listeners though? So the answer was, Alexi gave us this answer was, well, there's an array of listeners. It's a listener, but what is the listener? Listener is almost like a separate thread, yeah? Well, the event is going to raise an event. It's going to listen for the event to happen, and then the listener is going to be the event is going to be dispatched. The listener is going to pick up the event. So the event is raised, and then I'm going to respond to the event. Right? That's what happens. Right? Listener, and then response. Handled. Handle or unhandle. I can handle the event, or I can not handle the event. If I don't handle the event, nothing happens. Right? If I handle the event, I can do something when the event is raised. But the problem is when I set up a listener, I'm actually setting up almost like a structure as a separate thread. I'm listening all the time. It's an extra piece of memory. It's something that I'm putting in memory to listen. Now imagine if I had 10, 15, 20, 100 explosions. I'm going to have a listener for all of them. I have to remove event listening. I have to manage my listeners, right? But the problem is I don't know when this needs to be removed. I need to remove my listener when my animation finishes. So here in my start method, I create my listener. I point to my animation ended, and in here, I remove it. And I need to point to the animation ended object, and I need to unbind, which is this. So on is like a shortcut for add event listener. Off is a shortcut for remove event listener. And I have to remove my event listener or else it's going to cause me memory leak. Number one. Two, even though my event listener has been removed, right? And I can't see my animation anymore. My animation object has been created. and I've taken up memory to do that, and I need to destroy it, right? Or reuse it, one of the two. And I'm not doing that here. So either I create an animation, a explosion manager, where I have preload, I create X number of explosions, let's say 10 explosions from the beginning, and I recycle them. Every time I have an explosion, I use the same one over and over again, right? Even so, the problem is if I go to the next scene, those explosions are in memory. They haven't been deleted. I have to physically clean up after myself and delete everything that's in my scene, right? So until I do that, if I don't delete the stuff that's in my scene, I have all this memory that I'm using. And over time, if I play this game, and let's say I have 10 levels, 20 levels, 50, I don't know how impossible it would be, right? But if it got more difficult than this. But let's say I had 50 levels, right? Eventually my game would slow down over time, right? So there's some problems here. So the other problem is, okay, so here's what I want to do. So I wanted to, I'll show you the effect. So here, I'll turn it off. When my animation ends, I can't see my explosion anymore. Yeah, I turn off my animation, I unbind the event handler, because I don't want to have, or the event listener, because I don't want to have, you know, event listeners just hanging out. That's memory loop, okay? This is what this does. But now I want to use it. And the way I use it would be inside my manager, my collision manager. So again, here's my collision manager. Instead of this time hitting a coin, I hit a cloud. And I want my explosion to instantiate right on top of my cloud. Wherever I hit, that's where my explosion is going to be. So I want to do something like this. I want to say that let explosion, right, equal to a new objects dot explosion, right? And I want to have my explosion, the position of my explosion, X and Y, equal to object one, the one I'm checking, which is my plane, dot X, and explosion dot Y is equal to object one dot Y, right? So that's where it's going to be. And then I want to add it to the scene. So I want to say something like, wait a minute, I don't have access to my scene, right? My scene is something that my explosion manager got added to, but I don't have any kind of access to my scene at all. So going back to that, I have to go into my manager game, and just like I have my current scene, I need to create something else to manage. Public static current scene, let's say call it object, my current scene object, right? This is my current scene number or state, current state. This is my current scene object, which is of type objects.scene, whatever that is, right? So my current scene object is what I want to have, I want to tap into, so I can add child, right? I need to be able to add the explosion to the scene somehow, right? Going back to collision. I want to say something like this. I want to say that, well, managers dot game, so the game manager dot current scene object dot add child, and I want to pass in explosion. And I want you to think about what I'm doing here for a second, right? So I'm making an explosion, adding it to the scene, right? And in order for me to make this work, because I don't know what my current scene object is, I got to change that inside of my core game.ts. Down in here at the bottom where I'm doing my scene switching, right? So here's my scene switcher, and underneath my current state, I also got to save managers.game.current scene object is equal to current scene. I need to do that. I need to keep track of what my current scene is. When I switch my scene, I want my global object to know which one it is, so I can add child to it. Okay? Lots of little changes. Well, if I do this, like this, then what happens is I'm going to just keep track of how many objects I have in my scene. So let's go back into my scenes. Here's my play scene, right? And in my update function, I want to keep track of how many objects I have. So I'm going to say console.info. I want to say that game objects, how many game objects do I have? Here's my check, is equal to this dot num children. So however number of children I have, now you can keep track, every container keeps track of how many children it has. It's an array of display objects. That's what it is. So my scene is an array of display objects. It has a scene graph, right? So I know how many children I have. So I can say, well, how many children do I have right now? And I want to know that every frame as a test. Going back to my, let's just get rid of this for now. And this, I'll come back to that. Going back to my game, and let's take a look at it here. You know, in my inspector, I'll look at my console, and I'll start. And you can see that I have 11 objects, 12 objects, 13 objects, right? Every time I do an explosion, I add another object. Let's try that again. Oh, whoa, what happened there? Whoa, that was pretty wacky, right? Well, I know what I did. I know that what I did was I corrected my JSON files here somehow. Right, so here's my JSON file here. But I didn't somehow update my game up, my core in here, or I made a mistake. I typed the wrong. Let's see if I did that properly. Oh, it's explosion 1. Doesn't know what to do, so it doesn't know. Couldn't find my explosion, therefore it just rotated through everything, which is really bad, right? So let's try that again. So yeah, so start it. Right now it works, right? But look, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 objects. It's going to keep going because I'm not managing my explosions. My explosions are just increasing. I'm instantiating a new object every time. So again, a couple of options. One, make an explosion manager that keeps track of all my explosions. I create my explosions ahead of time. Maybe I make 10, and then I just cycle through them. I add that one. I just move to the next explosion, next explosion, next explosion. And I keep moving the explosion pointer to the next one, right? That's one thing I could do. Or when the explosion is done, it takes care of itself. It removes itself. Okay, let's try this. How do I do that? Remember, I'm not deleting myself. I'm not deleting the object. The object is still inside the scene, right? The object's always going to be inside the scene. I'm going to have 13 objects in the scene, right? And they're just not added to the scene. They're not displaying, right? Every time I do this in my collision, if you look at the collision manager, right? So in my collision manager here, when I do this, new objects explosion, I'm instantiating a new object. I'm making a new object enter the scene. Unless I delete my object, whatever that is, it's always going to be in my memory. Always, for now and for forever. That's just the way it works, right? What I can do to mitigate some of this, because I don't have a lot of time to do everything, right, is inside of my explosion object itself. I need to come back around and fix this, by the way. But in my explosion manager itself, or my explosion itself, I have this animation ended. And what I can do, because I have access to the superclock, to the current scene, right? I can do something like this: managers dot game dot current scene object dot remove child, and I can point to this. If I can remove my child, I can remove itself. It removes itself from the scene. Now, the problem with this is, again, it doesn't clean up that object. My object's not deleted, right? My object is physically in the scene, right? I don't have a way of cleaning up. I don't have a destructor function that's going to go through and when it gets to move from the scene, then I destroy it. I don't do that. I have to manually take care of my scene graph. All right, so. By the way, this is a void function, right? This function is void, because there's nothing that I'm adding in here, just to be clear on this. So let's see if this works. So if I come back to this and I start, I have my points out. Is my game objects 9, 10, 9, 10, 9, 10, 11, 12, 9, 10, 9. See? So now I keep track of all of my objects, right? Now I'm printing this out a lot, so that's why I'm getting all these violations. But you can see that it went back. It started at 9 and went back to 9. So my object removed itself from the scene. Did not remove the memory. Did not remove the memory. Memory allocation for that new object is still in the scene. So future work. Future work. I need an explosion manager. My explosion manager should only have X number of explosions. And when I'm done with my scene, before I move over to this thing right here, game over, right? I've got to go through my objects that are physically that I've instantiated and delete them all one by one. I haven't done that here. So when I go to my game over scene, all of my objects that I created before are still there in memory. And every time I go back, I'm making more objects. I'm making more objects. I'm making more objects. And I keep doing that over and over again in memory. My cache keeps growing. Make sense? Same thing with my start. When I go from start to play, I need to delete my stuff from start. Even if I remove all children does not kill the stuff I've instantiated. I need to clean up those things. So I need to have some kind of thing in my scene graph that goes through the list of unused objects and deletes them. Or something like that, like some kind of cleanup function. Otherwise, my game will continuously slow down forever, especially if I go to level 2, level 3, level 4, or keep restarting my level back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I'm just going to keep instantiating and keep putting things on the stack. I'm going to keep putting things on the stack until this is what's going to happen, stack overflow. Questions around this? Let me just put this up. I think we'll take a short break right now. We're kind of at that point. We have an hour and a half left, and then we'll. I want to take a look during the break for the people that are in the class. I want to look at your game. So please have your game ready to look at, right? So I can see where you're at with it. So just to clean up before we pause for a break. I want to clean up my stuff, so I don't care about that. So I've added my explosion nicely, so we'll do that. But what I want to do inside my play scene is get rid of that console.info. So I want to get rid of this. So my console.info is gone. And what I want to do is I just want to save these 15 changes. I want to stash them, like put them up on, save them, not stash them. And then I want to say added explosion effect, version 1. Here's a version 2 that we're going to do after the break. Okay, so let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll do more stuff with animation and optimization.